Hey guys, welcome back. My name is Michael McCarville, and this is a episode where we're going to build the Broadtop Mountain Models East Broadtop Machine Shop. This is an HO scale laser cut kit, and it is a machine shop of basically the Rockhill Furnace main shop area and yard area in Pennsylvania. That's where this structure is located. And we're going to jump in and take a look at this kit and do an overview, and then we'll jump right in and start doing some of the actual build. So to do an overview, it comes in a big box. It comes in this box, so it's fairly large. It's very large. And then it's a 22 by 14 inch footprint. Now, it suggests that you actually glue this down to a piece of MDF. And what I did actually was I wanted to raise this up a little bit and build it up on a foundation, because this structure actually sits, this portion over here, actually there's a foundation wall that's about 12-15 inches or so. So I'm using 15-inch dimensional basswood. This side over here is flat because the tracks come straight in here, and there's these will actually be removed as we go through the kit. So in order to, it comes in 3 separate pieces. In order to secure each of those, I've basically put basswood in areas where it's not going to get cut out. So that's how big it is, 22 by 14. So this is a big structure. The instructions are very well organized. They come in bags. So each major assembly is organized very well. The first one is the outhouse. Now the outhouse sticks on the side right here, and it's raised up a little bit. There's a little walkway, kind of. You'll see it when we get to it, but it basically sticks on here. So what we're going to do is we're going to use that as kind of a best practices, and we're going to talk about going through the build, what you want to do as far as adhesives and glues and clamping and trimming the battens off and that type of thing. But we're going to then not repeat ourselves over and over throughout the kit, and I'll just basically skip over some of the, spray it with adhesive and trim the battens, and then glue it with a wood glue and clamp it really well. I mean, so we'll talk about the outhouse, the smallest piece to the whole kit, and then we'll just assume some of those other things get done, as I say, attach the wall. So, talking about adhesives, Titebond 3 for wood, 3M Super 77 works great for basically anything like plastic to wood or corrugated metal to wood. It's basically a heavy-duty sprayable rubber cement. Then we'll use super glue for anything that needs a special kind of attachment, and Microsoft Krystal Klear I use a lot of times for windows, so we'll use that in places as well. I'll flag anything that we do as optional, like anything painting the interior, because the kit really doesn't go through building up the interior at all. So if we do any wood flooring or painting the concrete in here or adding any equipment or staining any of the interior wall supports and ceiling A-frames and things like that, any of that type of stuff, I'll make sure I flag that as optional, but you can just assume that we're probably going to prep this for interior detailing, and then if we do any detailing on the interior, that'll be a completely separate episode. We won't talk about anything like castings or lighting or anything like that. That'll be future opportunities for us to look at. The outside color, we're going to do a flat oxide red. The kit is fairly barn red, and the actual structure is really faded red. So we're going to use something kind of in between and do a little bit of light weathering on it, but we want this to appear more like the when it was actually in use in production and not weathered and abandoned for years and years. There will be a white that we use for the trim, in addition to the red for the exterior walls. And then if we use any staining or any for the flooring or any concrete color, we're going to use Hunter Line Cordovan Brown and Vallejo engine grime for the concrete. Now, the thing I like about the Hunterline stains is they're alcohol based and they don't tend to cause warping as much. But if you do use a water-based stain, you've got to be really extra careful about warping. So you want to make sure that you stain it, weight it down, and then after it's sat there for an hour or two, flip it over and then weight it down again, and just do that until you get a feeling that the material is not going to warp at all. The thing about the alcohol-based stain is there's still a small percentage of water in the alcohol-based stain, but um, you won't see it warp wood nearly to the extent of a water-based stain. So I'm going to use Hunterline Cordovan Brown. I like the color of it. I've used it on lots of kits, and I think it'll look great. Interior windows and things like that, again, we'll talk about that in the future. I've used resume paper for window shades. It works great. It's kind of that parchment looking paper. And then you can also use boards to board up windows too if you want to get a more neglected look, or you want to have it in an area where maybe there's a heavy duty drilling or impacts that any of the material doesn't fly out and hit the windows, and you'll see that in industrial shops a lot of times. Um, as far as any of the alternate stuff, I'll make sure I flag that as we go through it. So let's talk about the outhouse section that is going to be the very first part of this instructions. And again, I'm going to talk about the outhouse as the initial build, but it's going to be an example of how to build all of the rest of the sections. So I won't repeat myself over and over again and say, okay, make sure you clamp this down, make sure that you use 3M77 for the battens, how we affix the material, how we clamp and affix the each of the materials for the outhouse is how we're going to do the entire kit. So kind of use this as kind of the best practices for construction. The outhouse goes right about here, and it's a very small structure. The thing you want to do first is read the instructions front to back, read the whole thing, read the parts layouts. They're two separate sections. One is just the schematics for each of the pieces, and the other one is step-by-step instructions. So really good instructions. This video is to kind of enhance that a little bit with a little bit different views and that type of thing. What you want to do is you want to lay out the parts that you're going to do in the next several steps and test fit everything, but test fit the next few pieces too. Kind of hold them in place and add the next one, and make sure you understand how the pieces are going to overlap, if the wood pieces are going to overlap, if the battens over the top, that plastic material, if that's going to overlap, and if you're going to have gaps and issues, take that into consideration. Sand if you need to. This is a laser cut kit. You shouldn't really be doing a lot of sanding. If you're sanding a lot, then something else is going on. So, but there may be occasions where you've glued something in, you need to fix it. That happens. So just anticipate some of those overlaps as you go. You will notice that when you build the outhouse, that there are certain pieces that overlap other ones. So you'll want to go ahead and build it in a certain order so that you minimize any of the errors that you're going to possibly make. Start with a new X-Acto blade. Okay, we're going to do a lot of cutting, trimming. Start with a new, make sure your file is cleaned out. Get a fresh piece of sandpaper. You're going to do some sanding and trimming and stuff. Certainly as you're cutting stuff out of the sprues, make sure that those pieces where you've cut it off of the wood, basically the sheet, make sure that those cuts are nice and clean, and if not, clean them up with a file. Same with any of the window castings and that type of thing. Once you paint them, you're going to see that little thing that you didn't trim, so you want to make sure that you clean all that stuff up to begin with. I use clamps. I put everything in a square that I have taped down to my desktop, so everything's in a square to begin with. I use 1, 2, 3 blocks. I use rubber bands. I use a couple different kinds of clamps. Actually, I use little pincer clamps like clothespins. I also use bar clamps, brass ones. I use uh, um, like uh, paper clip clamps that you see in office supply stores, and if you've been in an office, you see that those big heavy duty binder clips. I use all that stuff. Be careful you don't deform any of the material. Put a piece of scrap wood down if you're going to be clamping something and the clamp is very heavy duty. But I use lots and lots of different kinds of clamps. So that only helps you get a good fit, and make sure it's dry and then move on. Let everything dry before you touch it. Don't keep touching it while it's wet. I learned that long ago the hard way over and over again. So um, again, water-based stuff, avoid it. This is a wood kit. Let's not use any water-based stuff if we can help it. If you're absolutely adamant on doing it, one thing I've found is put it down on a porous surface like a piece of cardboard, or a piece of wood is even better, and then weight it down. Put something to protect it, like a piece of cardboard or a piece of sandpaper side down, and then weight it down 1, 2, 3 blocks. Water bottles filled with water make great weights to put on top of that as well. But let it dry while it's clamped down. After an hour or two, flip it over and then clamp it down again. Let that water-based stuff. I do that for alcohol-based stuff too. Works great, but just make sure it's completely dry before you start messing with it. Let's see what else. I think that's about it. If you are going to paint stuff and you do have gaps, you can fill it in with some glue. Glue will dry out and kind of deform. It'll shrink a little bit, but if you have any modeling putty, you can use that to fill in some of the gaps, maybe 2 joints that maybe didn't come together quite well. So that's an option too. Just whatever you do, make sure you sand it nice and smooth. You can even hit it with a little bit of primer just to see how it looks, and then continue to go over it. We're going to weather this just a little bit because I want it to look a lot like the structure during more of a peak era. That being said, however, the metal roof is going to get rusted, so I am going to put a little bit of weathering on the walls, especially at the low side of it. But the roof is going to be basically a rusted corrugated metal roof. And we're going to use the material that comes in the kit. You're certainly welcome to try other roofing methods, but the actual structure had corrugated metal on it, so we're going to use it comes with a lot of corrugated because this is a big building and this has a ton of roof area. So just be prepared. You're going to be building a lot of corrugated stuff. And as far as weathering goes, that's very subjective. There's a lot of personal preferences in that. Some people are going to want to see a pristine building. Other people are going to say, I want it to look exactly like it looks today when I was there and I visited and I took pictures. By all means, you're welcome to basically have it with little to no paint on it at all. And that's going to be completely up to you, whatever you want to do. Whatever you do as far as weathering, make sure you're good at it before you start. If you're not sure about your abilities, go ahead and grab some scrap material and test it. If you're not sure what the foundation is going to look like, then try it on some of the interior bracings if you copy what I've done. The concrete flooring, well, these 2 pieces are going to come out, so you've got material that you can practice on there. You can practice on the underside of the MDF just to see what the concrete colors are going to look like. If you are working on basswood, grab some scrap pieces of basswood and just see what you want it to look like. Or if you know the structure is going to face on your layout like this, and the backside is not going to be seen, well, you probably ought to start on the backside, and that makes the most sense because if you make a mistake, then you can correct it, and it's a little more forgiving if you're not going to see it. So anyway, those are just some of the basic tips, but really anticipate where you're going in advance. Test fit everything. I can't say that enough. We're going to go through next. We're going to go through the outhouse build, and I'm gonna basically explain it as if you've never built anything before, and then when we jump ahead past that, I won't go through all those repetitive steps, and then you can just kind of follow along the build and watch what you want. So that's it. Let's go ahead and get started. We'll take a look at the steps for just the outhouse build itself. Okay guys, that's going to do it. I want to thank Nathan Klein for allowing me to feature this kit in our series, and until next time, take care and happy modeling. See ya.